First of all, when I started out, it was mainly to be just a history of the home and the mother and baby home and the children and the mothers, and to try and find a little bit out about them.
What's your main aim now? What would you like to happen?
Well, the aim of our committee from the start was to commemorate those children with a bit of dignity, to put their names up on plaques. The plaques will go on the walls that surround the little cemetery that's there. Just to have a memorial there. We would hope to, the second part of the project, to turn it into a little memorial garden. But there was an influx of people who, between mothers of large families giving a few dollars or a few euro to one man who said he would cover the whole costs of the plaque himself. 41,000 euro now in the credit union account for the plaques. The plaques are well covered, so the committee have decided now to make a memorial garden as well to the children because of all the money that has been donated, and every cent and every euro will go into that memorial garden.
It has now been completed, engraved thanks to money gathered by Catherine Corless from various charitable souls. Even the Sisters of Bon Secours have made a contribution.
Today we've honoured 3 extraordinary people.
Catherine Corless was honoured for uncovering the secret burial of hundreds of children at the
It was kind of a demand that, well, we would like to meet with you. And I was in a committee at the time, but that's another story. The committee I was in just wanted to put up plaques and remember the children. I wanted more. I wanted an investigation, and they didn't agree with that. But however, I was with the committee at that time, and the Galway County Council pushed and pressured into trying to put up a memorial on the spot. Now that would suit them grand, because there's no questions asked. You just put up a big cross and a big lovely monument, and a peace garden. That's what they wanted to do, call it a peace garden, and that would cover up all the tracks. But I fought against that. What I was getting from well, the authorities mainly, let them rest in peace, leave them there. You know, what's the point? We'll put a plaque over them. You know, and that's not it. You cannot put a memorial over a sewage tank. It was the ultimate insult to the mothers of those children and to the babies themselves. The ultimate. Who else would do it, or how could they do it? So our committee got together with the idea we would raise enough funds to put up plaques to name all those children. We felt the least these children might have was a name over their head, just an identity to give them back a little bit of the dignity.
In the days and years following the discovery of the possible final resting place of hundreds of little children, who died from natural causes in a children's home in Tuam in County Galway, the name Catherine Corless has remained in the hearts and minds of many people worldwide. She is not a professional historian, but has been given the title of Ireland's most famous historian ever, and has received many honours and accolades from individuals and organisations.
The credibility of those making such presentations and of those who gave Catherine Corless a platform to share her account of what happened in Tuam has been called into question as a result of such actions. Few, if any, of these organizations have disputed her testimony regarding such issues, not even those that take pride in being an excellent research facility.
So you had all those, they call them underground chambers, but there's no getting away from it. It was a septic tank. And they saw fit to put illegitimate children and babies, lovely little babies and children, down there when they died. And now they died from terrible causes. A lot of it coming up in the death worth was actually marasmus. Now that is starvation. And I would believe that the babies were just neglected, and if they were ill, I would doubt there was any fuss made over them. Now, marasmus is starvation. The nuns were paid by the state to look after these children. They got a capitation grant, which meant that they had the money to spend on the children. So there was no shortage of money because they had pigs, they had chickens, they would have loads of eggs, they would have good garden produce, they had greenhouses, so they would have fruit, tomatoes. But I have it from the word of the woman that grew up at the home all her life.
Julia Carter Devani was resident in St. Mary's Children's Home from the age of 9 and later worked as a domestic servant there until it closed in 1961, from which time she worked as a gardener at the Grove Hospital in Tuam. At some period in the late 1970s or early 1980s, Julia's memories of the home was recorded on tape by a local woman, Rebecca Mill Lane, known as Rebby or Rabby.
If you did listen to all the tapes like I did, I transcribed every single word that Julia Devani said. It took me days upon end. My transcript is every word that Julia said.
Catherine Corless transcribed these recordings for posterity and on occasions makes references to these memories, but does not always quote them truthfully.
Julia Devani Carter's description of the amount of garden produce grown at St. Mary's Children's Home, as published on Catherine Corless' own Facebook page, does not match the description of the same garden produce that Catherine Corless quotes at every given opportunity. According to the inspector's report of 1947, so often quoted by Catherine Corless and by others, there were 333 residents in the home in April of 1947, without counting the nuns and staff members. As someone who is familiar with life on a farm, Catherine Corless would be well aware that the food grown in the home garden would not be sufficient to feed so many for very long, but this does not prevent her from giving her own interpretation of this fact on every platform willing to hear her side of the story, without quibble or question.
A joint television production by RTE and ITV, which was first televised in November 2021, entitled The Missing Children, and which is still available to be viewed on more than one internet channel worldwide, made very little attempt to show a factual interpretation of events, and has accused those running that home of very serious crimes, including the murder of hundreds of children by starving them to death for profit.
People that was there, they remember clearly those babies being starved. They were starved themselves. We were going around with pot bellies, and the reason we everyone had pot bellies was they were hungry.
At night time, you'd be hungry and crying. I didn't care. So we had a hard time now with them. That's why I choose the church and state what they did now. The state paid them to look after us, what they did.
It really struck me how some of the death certs said marasmus. Now marasmus is starvation. The nuns were paid by the state to look after these children. They got a capitation grant, which meant that they had the money to spend on the children. They kept hens and they kept chickens and they kept pigs, and they had an exquisite garden with every kind of vegetable you could think of. They grew everything, so there was no need at all to let so many children die.
The mother and baby homes, they were profitable institutions because they were paid a capitation fee per child. And the more they starved the child, the more they ensured that the child lived in rags and was kept in the cold, the more money they made. The Bon Secours is a very rich order. It makes its money from private healthcare now, both here and in the States and other parts of the world. But I don't know any poor order of nuns, to be honest with you.
The Bon Secours are not only a religious order that operated in Ireland, but an international network of orders. The Bon Secours order today is involved with operating a massive private healthcare group and private hospitals around the world.
The Bon Secours nuns are in the top 20 when it comes to medical providers in the US. If you go to their website, you'll find fancy marketing about their mission to help those in need, but the experience of the mothers and babies in Tuam was very different. They're meant to look after those who can't look after themselves. They were entrusted with these children.
There are many questions about the money that was made through these institutions that separated mothers from their children and in which so many children died.
Poor nuns do. But I let them know that the Bon Secours sisters were paid by the state per head, per mother, per child. They were also getting grants from Galway County Council to maintain the home and to keep those children, to keep them well. And they were getting donations as well, wholesale. So there was no lack of money. They had a gardener there that looked after the place. She was a woman that grew up in the home, that was in the home all her life. The women worked very, very hard. They didn't need to employ anybody, so there was no money going out.
And so these children were kept in this institution without any of the normal care that children would be given. The concerns that were raised by inspectors who visited Tuam and described the children as pot-bellied, as emaciated, were clearly not taken seriously, and no action was taken to improve the conditions.
An excerpt from the April 1947 inspector's report is displayed in this clip from the documentary, The Missing Children. While Kaylin Hogan suggests that there were multiple cases of pot-bellied children in the home, Miss Alice Litster, the Department of Health inspector, pointed out that there were several cases of emaciated children, but only one 7-month-old boy was classified as pot-bellied.
As the death rates continued to be high, disproportionately high, for children within these institutions.
The reasons for deaths seem to be in more or less blocks. You would get measles, etc., etc. It was almost saying, putting something down for the sake of it. From my research, when babies had these common diseases, they didn't separate them. Cots were still very much together. The Bon Secours sisters were a nursing congregation as they are today. They would have knowledge of medicine and care. After all, their logo is, and always has been, to offer care and help for the sick. And especially Tuam, it shouldn't have had such high rates of death. The reasons for deaths seem to be in more or less blocks. You would get measles, etc., etc. It was almost saying, putting something down for the sake of it.
As a researcher, Catherine Corless should have been aware of the fact that a few weeks after the health inspector's visit to Tuam in 1947, a measles outbreak occurred in the children's home. One of the victims of this epidemic was John Desmond Dolan, the brother of Anna Corrigan. He was not the only casualty of this outbreak.
Along with Catherine Corless, Anna Corrigan brought out the story of the Tuam baby's burial scandal, which led to a commission of inquiry into mother and baby homes, which concluded in January 2021.
Anna's voice has been a loud one in calling for justice and closure. She says the report falls short of both.
9 years ago, I started the search for my two missing brothers, John Desmond Dolan and William Joseph Dolan. John was a full-term baby and his weight at birth was £8, 9.5 ounces. Sadly, John Desmond died in the children's home in Tuam, and the records indicate that he died from measles. I received then a copy of an inspection report that was done on the home. My mother would have left the home in February. So 2 months after she had left, John Desmond Dolan is actually recorded here. Now, a miserable, emaciated child with a voracious appetite and no control over bodily functions, probably mentally defective. His weight at birth, everything was normal. He was healthy. His mother is gone 2 months. He's emaciated, which means he's starved. A voracious appetite means he's not being fed. He's very, very hungry. Emaciated child with a voracious... It showed him as emaciated with a voracious appetite, no control over bodily functions, and possibly had a mental defect. John was born normal and healthy. They starved him to death. There's no question about it. Emaciated, you're starving. Voracious appetite, you're not being fed. Subsequently went and made a missing report on John that he didn't die of the measles, he died of malnutrition and neglect.
Although Anna Corrigan has stated on numerous occasions that her brother, John Desmond Dolan, was purposefully starved to death, she has never shown any proof to support her claims. The document that Anna Corrigan is holding up lists her mother Bridget's health as normal, but it makes no mention of her brother John Desmond Dolan's health, despite the fact that he was a full-term baby. The fact that his birth was reported as normal suggests that there were probably no issues during his actual delivery. Anna Corrigan's discovery that her brother was labeled a congenital idiot in the official death report has sparked her outrage. She has taken this matter to the Irish police force. However, a detailed examination of the death list reveals a different narrative. Despite her assertions and public displays of anger across various media platforms, John Desmond Dolan is not the only one characterized in this manner.
In the 1940s, terms like congenital idiot were used in medical and legal contexts to describe certain conditions. The term was used to describe a condition, not necessarily to insult or belittle someone. However, it's important to note that language evolves over time, and what might not have been considered offensive in the past can be seen as highly offensive and inappropriate today.
It was almost saying, putting something down for the sake of it. From my research, when babies had these common diseases, they didn't separate them. Cots were still very much together.
In the year 2020, the first wave of the COVID pandemic led to the unfortunate loss of at least 23 lives at the Dalgin House nursing home in Dundalk. This occurred despite each resident having a private room with an ensuite shower, toilet facilities, and a door for isolation. Given that such a tragedy could occur in the 21st century, despite advanced medical knowledge and care, it raises concerns about the likelihood of survival for those who were in the Tuam Children's Home during the early 20th century.
The Bon Secours sisters were a nursing congregation as they are today. They would have knowledge of medicine and care. After all, their logo is, and always has been, to offer care and help for the sick. And especially Tuam, it shouldn't have had such high rates of death.
By the autumn of 2021, Catherine Corless, the media personality, had already forgotten the lessons that she had learned as the researcher and human rights activist of the autumn of 2012.
And the BAFTA goes to The Missing Children.
Thank you so much. It's an incredible honour for us to win this documentary.
The Commission of Investigation into Mother and Baby Homes has informed me of an important development in relation to excavations it carried out in Tuam, County Galway. The Commission's excavations have revealed that human remains are visible in a series of chambers that may have formed part of sewage treatment works at the former Bon Secours mother and baby home. And importantly, they traced the remains.
By nature, politicians have a selective memory, but Irish politicians, it seems, have a shorter memory than most. Reaction from politicians was swift and predictable, with many scrambling to be seen to be heard the loudest in their condemnation of the nuns of Tuam. Few remembered, and even less cared about delicate little matters such as inconvenient home truths.
And the conditions in Tuam almost certainly contributed to the deaths of children. The mothers who were forced to work were
Catherine had the names of 796 children who died. She had the death certificates. So all of these children were legally registered as dying in the Tuam Mother. But they had no burial records. By law, you have to have a burial record for somebody who lived and died. There seemed to be no burial records at all for these children.
babies had been thrown in a sewage tank. I think we have to start with the fact that it's a crime scene and we need to know what happened.
In the autumn of 2023, Annette Mackay was one of those appointed as a member of a 6-person team that will support Daniel McSweeney, the Director of Authorised Intervention, on the advisory board that is in charge of overseeing excavation at the former children's home at Tuam.
This is my sister's death certificate. And then it gets really murky. So, Mary Margaret, whooping cough, cardiac failure, certified. Why did my sister die of a treatable disease, whooping cough? Why would a baby die of whooping cough? Why did some babies die of heart failure?
Mary Margaret O'Connor, Annette Mackay's younger sister, tragically passed away at just 6 months old on June 9, 1943. Her death was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger tragedy, a whooping cough epidemic that took many lives during a time of war and extreme hardship. However, Annette Mackay's recent appearances across various media platforms may give the impression that these events are more recent and that her sister was the sole victim. This is not accurate, as the epidemic occurred many years ago and claimed numerous lives.
Why did babies die of malnutrition? How is this happening?
While Catherine Corless and other sources often claim that malnutrition was the cause of death for many children at the children's home in Tuam, the reports provided in the Commission of Investigation's 5th interim report and final report do not mention malnutrition in great detail. There is no record of it happening in St. Mary's home in Tuam. The story of the lost babies of Tuam has been called Ireland's greatest shame, and that is precisely what it is, but the real shame is on the many who are exploiting the deaths of hundreds of little Irish children for their own sordid personal agendas. The Missing Children documentary, which was co-produced by Ireland's national broadcaster and by others, is promoting itself as being a true crime documentary but without showing proof of any crime. With a mixture of half-truths and innuendos, it has no regard at all to the hurt and the damage that it is causing. It also sets a new low in the standards of Irish and international broadcasting journalism.
In the autumn of 2012, a dream was born: to raise a monument to celebrate the lives of little children who never had a chance to live. In the winter of 2023, the monument that had been forged by that dream, the plaques that had been created by many people with love, still lie in storage, waiting for a day that may never come. The legacy of love has turned to a legacy of hate, but the flame has not yet been extinguished. The dream still burns with a fire that will never die.